Yo yo, what's cracking people? For me, music and sound effects in games are just as important as any other part of game design. They can drastically change the feel of a game, as well as become the most remembered and nostalgic elements of a game, even at times bringing you back to a very specific moment. 99% of the games we play have some form of music and sound, but how many of those games fuse all elements of music, sound, and game design into one, creating an experience that takes the game to new levels of immersion, to the point where you feel that the designers and the composers were almost the same person, that all elements of the game were designed at the same time and just wouldn't be the same without each other. In this segment on my channel, I'd like to talk about some of those games that for me created game design and music synergy, as I like to call it. The first game I want to talk about is Banjo-Kazooie on the Nintendo 64. But before Banjo-Kazooie came out, there was the legendary Super Mario 64. It was in this game that I first experienced an absolutely wonderful moment where Nintendo EAD and Koji Kondo created a level that took gaming music to a whole new experience for me, whilst at the same time making the player's gameplay experience more mesmerizing, or my experience more mesmerizing. Jolly Roger Bay, for me, is a fantastic level in Super Mario 64, but not only that, the music in this level is arguably one of the most finely crafted gaming compositions ever made. The absolutely wonderful thing about this level is that based on where your character is, the soundtrack to the game evolves on 3 different levels. You have the bass structure of the song playing while you're out of the water. Then when you enter the water, that bass composition acquires some additional notes that instantly places you and your character into that watery environment. Then finally, when you exit through an underwater tunnel and into a cave, the same music evolves even further and acquires some additional bass as well as notes that are once again appropriate for the environment and what you're currently doing with your character. For me, it's an absolute masterclass in game design and sound, something that was achieved back in 1996. That's 20 years ago. It makes me feel old, and I certainly didn't have 5 kids to feed back then. But for me, Rareware, as they were called back then, took this inspiration and elevated it to new levels with Banjo-Kazooie. Everything about this game wanted the sound and music to be integral to the experience. I mean, hell, even the items were musical in nature, and some of the characters often spoke in rhymes. Grant Kirkhope, who primarily composed the music for this game, wanted the music to effortlessly change from one composition to the next, whilst like Jolly Roger Bay, wanted the bass composition to remain in the background. I was lucky enough to recently speak to Grant via Twitter. I love Twitter for that. I asked him how he managed to create the transitional music in Banjo-Kazooie, and he replied telling me that he used the LucasArts iMuse software, which I didn't know anything about, but after investigating, I learned that this was first used in The Secret of Monkey Island on the PC. And in this game, when you guided your character into different locations, the music would once again transition seamlessly into a slightly different composition of that bass track. I'm amazed that this sort of technique has not been used in many other games since then, and I'd like to thank Grant for furthering my insight into the wonder that is Banjo-Kazooie's music. So getting back to the game, the change in composition starts at the very first area, where you're able to, as an example, jump into a river and dive under the water in search of the game's hidden puzzle pieces. The music of this area gets you bouncing along with it, whilst you take further delight in Banjo-Kazooie's movesets. As you jump into the water, you're rewarded with a lovely deep splashing sound, that feels suitable for the character's weight. Once again, that attention to detail, even in the sound and the character. Then, as soon as you dive down, that same music which was playing above the water takes on an incredible underwater rendition of the same bass track, similar to Mario 64. This is brilliant because the music just doesn't have to change or stop in order for this transition to take place. Whatever moment the music was at when you entered the water, or whatever the environment in this game, is that same moment it suddenly transitions into its new composition, continuing that same beat, and it's absolutely fantastic. The designers and composers wanted you to feel like you were playing in whatever environment your character was currently in. Add in the new playstyles and sound effects that your character acquires in these environments, and it's truly a wonderful synergy of game design and music. There are other moments in this game where you could be flying around or transformed into an animal, where once again the music changes, as well as the gameplay to incorporate all of these elements, making everything just feel organic and alive. For me, the height of the transition in music comes in the form of the game's main hub world, which takes place in Gruntilda's lair, the bad guy of the game, or in this case the bad girl. The multi-layered song that changes through every single area of the hub world is utterly sensational, and is all triggered by the movement and placement of your character within that environment. It's just something that you don't see or hear anymore, and I'm scratching my head as to why. Once again, the Nintendo 64 was home to some truly game-changing stuff, from the obvious hardware innovations to the more subtle and sometimes blatant software innovations, many of which have been criminally forgotten in today's games. So I'd like to tip my hat to Rare, Grant, Kirkhope and everyone else involved in the making of Banjo-Kazooie for thinking of the player and how they interact in every way with the wonderful world they are playing in. So, do you feel the same way about this game, or can you think of any other games that use this technique? Like I said, I'll be dedicating this channel to covering some of those games that I feel make this music and gameplay connection. So, as always, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your comments below. Peace!